it will never be lost on me that a lot of people that are regretting their vote for Donald Trump are not regretting it because of the harm that it's being inflicted upon other people. No, that's not the reason why. They are regretting it because they're feeling the effects of that harm that they thought was going to be inflicted upon other people. You see, if a lot of these people were actually looking outward and saying, damn, he's doing this to other communities, and I feel bad because I voted for this, and I feel bad because this is happening to other communities. But we know, specifically black and brown people, more specifically black people know, that if it was only impacting us, if the only harm that was being inflicted was on our community, a lot of these people that voted for Donald Trump wouldn't care, especially if they weren't feeling the effects of the harm that they voted for, that they thought was only going to impact people that were not attached to them. You see, what a lot of people need to do when it comes to what happened in this last election is a internal self-reflection within their communities. And as I've said on many occasions, this country has never really truly voted for progress. And the reason why that doesn't happen is in the very DNA of this country, that white supremacy that is at the core of this nation, where a lot of white people see progress when it comes to other groups of people that are not white as a handout. But when white people are struggling and the government is forced to do something for them, they see that as deserving. And that's something that needs to be revamped, rethought about, reimagined. Because here's the reality. White supremacy does not benefit even poor white people. Ultimately, you will become a victim of the very system that you enforce with your vote and your voices. Eventually, and even if you are a white person, eventually, what you vote for, the harm that you inflict upon other people with your vote, will ultimately come back to you, especially if you're not in a certain class or a certain tax bracket.
Let's talk about a hard truth. White people thought poverty and suffering belonged to black people until it happened to them. That is not just a quote. It is a reality rooted in history, ignorance, and systemic illusion. Let's break this down. Watch and pay attention, and I will share my thought later.
I'm just going to start asking questions. Like, for instance, one, when are we going to accept that he's trying to be a dictator? He's not hiding it. He hasn't hid it at all. And depending on how you look at it, he's doing a pretty good job. Two, when are we going to accept that he does not care about people? I saw this man get on Rachel Maddow, I think, and was saying like, oh, Trump fired the man that saved his life when he got COVID, and he still fired him. If he knew that, then it would be no, it wouldn't. He probably already knows and doesn't give a fuck. Can we stop acting like he cares? He doesn't care. Assume that he doesn't give a fuck, okay? Because that's going to be more accurate. He don't give a fuck that he saved his life. You're just setting yourself up to be disappointed at that point. When are we going to stop acting like hard evidence and logic is going to make MAGA people not MAGA anymore? They've already proven they don't give a fuck about that. We need to accept that. Share the information, but understand that until they want to understand, they're not going to. They're in a cult. That is how that works. You present the information if you want to, if you care to, and hope one day that they get it. Y'all getting upset because all this logical shit is happening, and you're like, do you see now? Do you see? No, they don't. That's the whole point. It's okay. Just keep doing your thing, but don't let it get you bent out of shape, okay? Also, when are we going to accept that there are ways in which he's very much not stupid? Like, he is not stupid in every regard, okay? There are some things he's very aware of what he's doing it, and he's doing it intentionally. Like people are doing themselves a disservice by thinking every bad thing that happens is because they're stupid. Sometimes it's just because they suck. It's because they're bad people. That's it. There ain't much else to it. Also, when are we going to accept that the contest happened? Because, y'all, that was 6 months ago. Okay, and at this point, we deep in this thing. Okay. Now, if you want to have a conversation about some weird data and looking into some things, that's one thing. Even if you want to unpack the reasons behind some of the decision making we saw last year, I'll give it to you. But this whole like going back and forth thing, y'all, we gotta move on, okay? It might be time to go and get like therapy or talking to somebody in your community and stuff. And I don't say that in a condescending way. I'm being so serious. Because it's not going to be emotionally gratifying to come on this app. I want better for us. That's why. I would think you probably want to use your emotional energy in a different place, considering how little emotional energy a lot of us have. But I'm also making assumptions, so if it don't apply, just ignore me. But I'm just saying, there's a lot of stuff to focus on right now. That one's not gonna be rectified on this app. My last question for now: when are we gonna start talking about what we actually want things to look like for real, and rooted in reality? Okay, we have what we want in theory and what's actually possible and probable. What amendments we trying to add to the Constitution? What does the future look like? What does leadership look like? How are we recovering? Because we need to do something. Because if we don't, this is gonna happen again. And this time they're gonna have a blueprint. So
listen, if a Democrat did this shit, they would be screaming for impeachment, and you know it. If anybody other than Trump was doing this shit, they would be screaming for impeachment, and you know it. Is disobeying the Supreme Court enough for y'all to stop pushing the goalpost? All the far-right MAGA influencers on this app, is disobeying a unanimous decision from the Supreme Court enough for y'all to say, hey, maybe everybody else could have been right? What is that? Prove to the world that's watching this bullshit unfold, prove to them that he is a part of MS-13 or Tren del Agua or some violent terrorist gang and he's just committed terrible acts. Prove it. Where is the evidence? That's why due process is fucking important. Why would you come out and say, hey, we fucked up? And then when a judge orders you to have him back within, I think it was 72 hours, and then ultimately the Supreme Court says, yeah, Trump, you definitely have to go fucking get him. The Department of Justice comes back and says, oh, well, by facilitate, they mean if he makes it back here, then we'll change his immigration status, but we're not going to go get him. Y'all put him the fuck there. They're saying, oh, we don't have the power to go into a sovereign country. And then the leader, whoever the fuck was in that White House meeting today, whoever's over the El Salvador prison, he said, yes, I don't have the power to do that. Or he said, I could release him in El Salvador, but then why would we release a terrorist in our own country? We came all this way when we used to be the most dangerous country. You want us to go back? Where's the due process? Why do we have world leaders snatching people up, sending them to a different fucking country, putting them in a maximum security prison that nobody leaves? And then when the highest court in the land says, go get him, you know you fucked up. He says, I can't. But if he makes it back here somehow, sure, he can come home. And you're still defending that? Are you fucking kidding me? That man has a wife and a daughter. They snatch him up, send him to El Salvador in a fucking prison, no due process, no evidence. Just call him a gang member. And then they say, oh, I know that the Supreme Court unanimously told me to go get him. And I said on camera that I respect the Supreme Court and I would follow an order from the Supreme Court. But then in real time, they're saying, oh, can't do it. It's a test. It's a test. It's a test to see what will happen if we disobey the Supreme Court. What will happen? And then they're talking about building more prisons to send U.S. citizens to. There's no way the country voted for this. There's no way. There's no way. There's no way. You want us to believe that you're only going to deport the worst of the worst criminals in America that have a citizenship here. You're only going to deport those when you literally just admitted to wrongfully deporting somebody in this whole attack on illegal immigrants thing. You want us to trust that? You just sent a fucking father and a husband to a maximum security prison, admitted to it, and are actively disobeying an order from the Supreme Court to go and get him. And then you want Americans to cheer for you when you say, yeah, we're going to build more prisons and send the worst U.S. criminals to those prisons too. Impeach that motherfucker. Impeach that motherfucker by tomorrow.
You ever just sit back and realize we're all getting robbed in broad daylight? Like, not metaphorically, I mean straight up looted, pickpocketed. While we work ourselves into early graves, billionaires sit around on super yachts Googling how to dodge taxes better. And it ain't just the usual suspects like Musk, Bezos, and Gates. And yeah, I'm talking about Trump too. That man plays broke for votes and rich for taxes. He said, I'm smart when asked why he doesn't pay his fair share. And millions of folks cheered. You know what that is? That's Stockholm Syndrome. Loving your abuser because they let you breathe. Meanwhile, we pay in blood, in labor, in overdoses, in years we'll never get back. The top 1% of this country now hoards more wealth than the entire middle class combined. In 2025, they control over $50 trillion, and they made $1.5 trillion during COVID alone while we stood in food pantry lines and begged for $1,200 checks. That ain't capitalism, that is extraction. That is war, and we are the battlefield. They got folks working 3 jobs just to afford rent on mold-infested apartments. They buy politicians like Pokemon cards. You think the system's broken? Nah, it works exactly how it's supposed to. We are the product. We are the fuel. We are the meat grinder's favorite meal. They convince poor white folks to blame immigrants. They tell black folks to pull themselves up by the bootstraps with no boots. Keep us too tired, too sick, too divided to fight back. That's the game. That's always been the game. Fred Hampton said, we're going to have to struggle. We're going to have to fight. Not just with fists, but with truth, with solidarity, with real, hard, uncomfortable organizing. You want freedom? It ain't coming from a voting booth or a billionaire's speech. It's coming from us, from union halls, from mutual aid drop-offs, from showing up when the floods hit and FEMA ghosts. They stole everything but our will to survive. And now we take it back. Not asking, not waiting, we take it.
I don't believe we're talking enough about what the Trump administration has effectively been doing. I'm sure by now everybody's seen the news cycle circulating in which Venezuelans were being arrested, detained, and then deported to an El Salvadoran prison. 60 Minutes did an investigation into this and found that nearly 75% of them had no criminal record. The government used a point system and tattoos to label people Venezuelan gang members of Tren de Agua. No proof, no evidence, no due process. Due process is a basic human right. One of the people who were sent to this El Salvadoran prison was Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He is a father of a 5-year-old kid. He's married to a United States citizen, and he was here legally. A federal judge ordered that he should be brought back to the United States. The Supreme Court upheld this decision, saying that Trump and his administration must bring this man back to the United States. Trump's administration now contends that it has no duty to return this illegally deported man to the United States. In fact, he went on to say that he could not force a sovereign nation in El Salvador to hand this man back over to us. Now, the Trump following believes that Trump can do anything. He can negotiate any deal. He is the author of the art of the deal. We know that Trump is so good that he even negotiated a deal to repatriate the Tate brothers, who were arrested on credible charges with evidence, and he was able to get them back into the United States from Romania. Also, think about this, the reality of what's going on. We're arresting people without due process, no crimes committed, and then we're selling them to a foreign nation. We're selling them to a slave labor camp. Has anybody ever studied history and saw the transatlantic slave trade in which black people were treated as subhuman, as property, sold into chattel slavery? Let's not mince words. Let's not sugarcoat this. People are being kidnapped off the streets and sold, trafficked into slavery, human traffic. The party that claims to want to protect people from human trafficking is literally trafficking and selling innocent people into slavery. Now, I know this video will get censored because of the words that I'm using and because TikTok and Meta and all these social media apps have been working to silence the opposition voices to Trump, and they've been working to push Trump's agenda. So I can really use your help in showing some love, engage with this content, and let's see if we can get it out there because these videos are being suppressed.
For decades, even centuries, poverty in America has worn a black face. From slave labor to underpaid work, from red line neighborhoods to food deserts, black communities have systematically pushed to the margins. But instead of seeing this as a result of racism, society called it a black condition, lazy, dependent, criminal. They did not see poverty as a system, they saw it as our identity. So when white folks saw us struggling, they blamed us. When we cried out for help, they called us entitled. When we demanded better, they told us to just work harder. Why? Because they believed suffering was something we deserved, not something they could ever face. But then the factories shut down, the jobs disappeared, the cost of living skyrocketed, and guess what? Poverty came knocking on white doors. In Appalachia, in the Middle West, in trailer parks and small towns, suddenly the pain did not look so distant. And now, some of the same people who once said, why do not black people just pull themselves up, are asking the government for help, are addicted, are homeless, are desperate. This is not about gloating. This is about realizing what black people have always known. Suffering is not about race. It is about system. Dr. King said it best. What affects one directly affects all indirectly. But they did not listen then, because as long as it was our pain, it was easy to ignore. The truth, poverty is not a black problem. And maybe now, just maybe, more people will understand that justice is not about color, it's about fairness, dignity, and survival for everyone. Thank you for watching, guys. Don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comment box below. Until next time, cheers and have a good one.